What's up, everybody? It's guubums back with another comps video. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm a competitive player from North America, and I've been rank 1 every set since I started playing in like set 4. So yeah, and I guess I make comps videos, so here's a comps video. Okay, so today I'll be talking about the hero augments. For those of you guys who don't know what hero augments are, so pretty much in set 8, I believe, they released a set mechanic that was hero augments. And the way hero augments work is that like you pick an augment and pretty much they transform the way a specific unit works into like a much more powerful version of themselves. I think pretty much since that set, people weren't really happy with hero augments in that set just because it was like evergreen. Every single game would have one, every single champion would have multiple of them, and pretty much it just wasn't received very well. Since then, they've released hero augments as like kind of like a little drip thing that they do in different separate sets. So right now we have these 5 champs with hero augments, and it just so happens that every single one of them are at least strong, but several of them are actually extremely broken even at the highest levels of play. And the interesting thing about these hero augments is that they're actually extremely easy to play. They're extremely straightforward, so if you're a lower elo player or you don't play that much TFT in general, this video is going to be really useful for you, just because anytime you get one of these hero augments, you'll most likely be able to get some free LP. That being said, it slightly depends on your spot and your items and all that, but they're so easy to play that it's really hard to mess up, assuming your spot is acceptable for them. So yeah, pretty much coming in at number 5, we have Drop Blossom or Neeko. So you do, once again, need the Drop Blossom augment to actually play this comp. You can get it on 2-1 or 3-2. If you get it on 3-2, it becomes Drop Blossom Plus, and you get a Neeko 2 instead of a Neeko 1 with the augment. And yeah, pretty much you just want to be playing this comp when, say on 2-1, you have like multiple Neekos, so you have 2 Neekos, you get Drop Blossom, and you immediately get a Neeko 2. You'll most likely streak all of stage 2. And then as you move on to the game, you'll be able to streak later as well. And then obviously, if you have a Neeko 2 or even 4 Neekos, something like a 4 Neekos, it's not that common of a scenario on 3-2. And they offer you Drop Blossom Plus, you can probably just pick it and force it as well. It's especially true when you have Mythic Crest. So sometimes you open with Mythic Crest on, say, 2-1 and you're looking to play Lilia, but then you end up for a spot where you can play around Drop Blossom instead. And so you get Drop Blossom Plus on 3-2. Even if you have like only 2 Neekos without having a Neeko 2, you just pick it up. You have 5 Neekos all of a sudden. And once you 3-star, you're just going to be off to the races. So pretty much this comp is pretty simple. All these comps are going to be kind of like running a very similar kind of playstyle, just because like that's just how they work. Because so much of the power of the comp is placed into one unit, you really want to be juicing up that unit as much as you can. So in the case of Neeko, you're mostly playing around Mythic, vertical Mythic. In the case of the other ones, you're going to be playing around a different vertical. But in the case of Neeko, you're playing around a vertical Mythic board, and sometimes you're going to like fit in a couple of heavenly units. Soraka specifically is a really strong one, just because she's a good unit. They actually just recently buffed her. She has a lot of utility in her ability, pairs well with some of the late game units, as well as giving you AP, which is obviously one of the more relevant stats for a unit like this. Most of the time, you're going to be playing Malphite for most of the early game anyway, so it's really easy to just fit in heavenly. You're just stacking a little bit more heavenly. Some of the heavenly augments, specifically Heavenly Crest and Divine Rolls, are actually pretty reasonable for this comp, but it's not going to be like that all that important, so I didn't figure the need to put it on the right here. But yeah, it's pretty standard. So if you guys have ever played the Kog'Maw board, Kog'Maw reroll board, it's this exact board on 5, and then most of the time you're fitting in Alawi on 6. You're really just going to be doing the same thing with this Neeko board. Your level 5 is stable around this, but obviously if you're playing Drop Blossom Plus, for example, then most of the time you're going to be level 6, so you just fit in Alawi just because it's ghostly. It's the strongest ghostly available to you at this time, but it doesn't really matter who you play. Well, you can play Soraka, you can play Kiana, even is reasonable. Kiana's pretty bad, but you can play like Soraka and Alawi are going to be the most common ones you probably find, just because this gives Arcanist ghostly. It's a little bit too good, but any Arcanist will do. Most heavenlies will do, assuming you need something cheap. Obviously, as you find Alawi and Soraka, you put them in, and then you're capping around Lilia, Nautilus, and all the other mythic units. So ideally you want to be making it to 7 mythic if possible. So obviously that requires Sway to do, and then you just put in a TK, or it could be Bard, but TK is better just because Bard in general doesn't do anything. So something like this is really strong. Obviously this requires 10 units. In the case that we have this online without a mythic crest, then we can drop, you know, Malphite and Alawi are pretty easily droppable. I'd say Alawi is probably slightly better than Malphite. So you would probably play this board on 9. And then if you have 7 mythic otherwise, most of the time you drop Alawi. That being said, if you already have Alawi 2, it becomes really difficult to drop because it's going to be just a lot of your board power to begin with. And then yeah, you can just put Shiv on Lilia. On Kog'Maw is who I put it on, just because like for most of the game it will be a Kog'Maw, but like you want to 3-item your Lilia because she's going to be your backup carry. And then obviously Neeko is going to do a lot. Something like Gunblade, you'll notice in a lot of these comps is actually pretty reasonable, just because the unit that's going to be alive in your front line is going to be your hero augment or your hero carry. And in this case, being it Neeko, someone who scales naturally with Drop Blossom, the way it works is that like with every subsequent cast, Neeko, the radius of Neeko's ult goes up by 1. So pretty much at some point it's going to nuke the entire board, and it does a lot more damage, and she also heals a lot more during her spin effect. So pretty much that's what Drop Blossom does. And the way it works is Neeko is just going to live until the end of the fight. The thing is, her cast animation is a little bit long, so she actually gets a couple fewer casts than you're led to believe. But at the same time, because the fights are going long, then stuff like Archangels on both Neeko and Lilia become really strong. That being said, like death cap is actually super reasonable. So Archangels you would assume is like significantly better than death cap because your Neeko is expected to live until the end of the fight. But because death cap is such a strong item that if you have death cap, you're probably just slamming it anyway. Especially because it also leaves you with a shift component. Death cap does leave you with a spark component, but because no one else in this comp other than Neeko is going to live long enough other than backline carries, it's just a little bit better to have a shiv anyway. That being said, it is fine to also put spark on Neeko. It is worse. You'd much rather have a tank item here. Even a second BT is pretty reasonable, but for the most part, you're really just looking for that Archangel's BT. And you're off to the races. And then yeah, you're just capping around the standard legendary cap outs. Lilia Hui, if you have a mythic crest, then you can look to play something like an Azir. Stuff like Soraka are going to be pretty good in the mid game to kind of like get you through that. But it doesn't really matter that much. Mid to late game, I guess. Okay, so next up we have Ethereal Blades. And, okay, this one is also something that you guys have probably already seen because it's been meta for so long. It's really simple. It's a Shen hero augment that behaves, has the same rules as the Neeko hero augment. And it just means that, like, if you have it on 2-1, you can get, like, ideally if you have a Shen 2 and some of the items already, you can definitely go towards playing this comp. The thing is, this comp is actually a lot more item dependent than all the other ones, or else it'd probably be among the top tiers. All three of these, are the last three, are actually of the same tier, but these two are slightly worse. Thing is, this comp actually would probably be the same tier. It's just the itemization is really tough. So you do really want double Rage Blade. The reason why I put Bramble and Giant Slayer is because they're both roughly equivalent as the third item, but the thing is, double Rage Blade is borderline non-negotiable on this champ, so it makes it really tough on your itemization. Most of the time, you're not picking this unless you're already, in the case of 3-2, so Ethereal Blades Plus, you at least have one Rage Blade, or at least like one component of a Rage Blade, or like Bow Rod on bench or something like that. Also, you realistically just can't pick this up. And then on 2-1, if you're picking it up, you must have at least one half of a Rage Blade. Ideally, the bow half, because it tends to be the harder thing to get. But that being said, in the current meta, rods are actually pretty difficult to come by as well. So most of the time in the past, if you could just have a bow, you can pretty much guarantee a Rage Blade just because at some point you know you'll be able to get a rod. But nowadays, it's a little bit different just because even rods are a lot more contested. So it is really difficult to get that double Rage Blade online. Pretty simple stuff. You're just rerolling at 6 for, you know, Shen 3 stuff. Sometimes you can go for Yorick 3, but it's not the most important. Thresh 3 as well are both on the table. But because you're being given a Shen off your augment, either in the case of 2-1, most of the time you already at least have one Shen before you pick it up. I would recommend against taking it if you didn't at least have one Shen. But yeah, most of the time, because you're given a Shen and sometimes you're given 3 Shens, you're not going to be able to get these other upgraded 3 stars. So you really are just looking for that Shen 3. But yeah, this comp is really straightforward. You're just like playing as many behemoths as possible. I put Neeko in as your level 6 board, but it doesn't really matter. Most of the time you're just playing around these 4 units and then plus 2 more. Very rarely will you be able to play 6 behemoth. Obviously, if you have a +1 behemoth crest, you can play it around Cho'Gath, and it's really basically that way. Sometimes if you hit an Ornn, you can just play 6 behemoth on 6. But the thing is, it's a little bit weaker to play 6 behemoth on 6, just because your Shen at that point generally doesn't have double Rage Blade yet. It's also generally not 3-star. So having an off carry, something like an Alune, Spread Morello, maybe a Shiv, or just like other damage items like an Archangels is generally going to be pretty good to give your team a little bit more damage. 6 Behemoth is strong as the game progresses, but just at the moment you get it, it tends to be a little bit weaker. This comp is a little bit nicer than some of the other comps just because you can access its vertical 6 Behemoth without actually having Behemoth Crest. So if you just look at this, I have 7 Behemoth, and like I don't even need Udyr, and I can play 6 Behemoth. You obviously do need Ornn, but like some of the other comps, for example, you can't even access some of their verticals until you have a 5 cost. This comp doesn't even need a 5 cost, so most of the time when you get to 7, get to level 8, you roll for 1 Ornn and you already have 6 Behemoth online. You're still playing a random backline of your choice. Obviously, Alune holds items really well. Lilia is really strong right now, and you can get Behemoth with Cho'Gath, and so like say Hui is pretty much the best thing you can play. So ideally, like your level 8 board looks something like this. Obviously, any of these can come out for an Udyr at any point. So something like this looks really, really good. And then you just start itemizing Hui and Lilia. It's a little bit tough because once again, you're using a lot of your rods on this Rage Blade here. So you're not really going to be able to like have an Archangels, but like something like a Shojin is pretty reasonable to build. So say your Alune is being played in the mid game, you put a Shojin on your Alune. These can get moved onto your late game units pretty well, and also Alune spreads attack speed onto units of the same row. So if you just have Alune and Shen in the same row, ideally the right corner is a lot better. This is just because say you're up against a melee comp. They're not that common right now, but say you're up against a melee comp, say like Kayn and Lee Sin, only 2 units can hit your Shen. So on this corner, obviously 3 units can hit. And you're frequently going to find yourself having Shen 1v9 because he's so tanky, and obviously he spends the entire fight stacking up Rage Blade, so by the end of the fight, he's fully ramped and he's going to be really strong. So interestingly enough, because of that, something like Healing Orbs is actually one of the strongest augments with this comp. I believe Healing Orbs and Gifts are the two strongest gold augments outside of Behemoth Crest and obviously Ethereal Blades. So stuff like that is going to be really, really strong just because you'll find your Shen will 1v9 at the end. I know some people are going to ask me, why not BT and why not Gunblade? Gunblade is somewhat reasonable. If as a third item, you still need double Rage Blade. But the thing is, you're going to find that you lack single target damage. So you pretty much the way this kind of like unit works or this comp works is that you really want Shen to kill a unit in 3 autos. So the way Ethereal Blades works is because your unit is getting 3 range and pretty much Ethereal Blades or his ult does a lot more damage. The way it works is that you have 3 auto attacks with your ult to kill a unit, and without Bramble and without Bramble or GS, most of the time you can't kill a tank in 3 autos. And if you can't kill a tank in 3 autos, that means it's not dying until your next cast. So you're actually losing a lot more DPS than you might be led to believe. So obviously you do really want a third damage item of some kind. Titans actually does really, really poorly, so it really just has to be Bramble, GS, and I don't really think anything else really does it. I've seen like IE and Jewel Gauntlet, but they're not very good, so I wouldn't really build that. Maybe like in some niche scenarios, this is okay if you have some sort of AD from somewhere. Say you have like gifts or like you have my sword, something like that. But that's not something I would really think about just because it's buffing 1 unit and the unit is not really using it all that well. The reason why Bramble scales damage is just because like Shen scales off of armor, which is another reason why 6 Behemoth is so important, because it gives your Shen more armor and his damage scales off armor. So and obviously like it makes it the case of like sometimes you're fighting against a melee comp, say an Ashe. Kai'Sa's pretty out of the meta as of the new patch, but like Kayn and Lee Sin are somewhat around. Just the Bramble kind of like helps him stay alive a little bit longer in like the 1v1s, so he kind of wins all the 1v1s with all the Rage Blade stacks. Yeah. Next up, we have Midnight Siphon. I don't know why I have this next up, but it is the strongest one there is. Oh, the reason why I have it is because these 3 are 2 costs. I'll talk about the 2 1 costs last. So Midnight Siphon is the strongest hero augment in the game, just because Vertical Umbral is probably the strongest setup in the game. So the rest of them requires slightly worse setups. Just because they're pretty much not comps outside of their hero augment, whereas this is a comp even outside of its hero augment, so the hero augment is just making it that much stronger. So in this comp, you're really ideally looking for Yorick 3, Elune 3. So in the other comps, you don't actually have to reroll, or you pretty much not only do you not have to reroll, you're not really given the opportunity to reroll for a second unit to pair with your main hero augment carry. But because Elune is so strong, especially after the buffs in the previous patch, this comp just like functions really well as a comp, regardless of whether or not you have the hero augment. So if you want to play like Vertical 6 Umbral Elune reroll, it's already a strong comp. It's just this comp just allows you to reroll Yorick on top of that. And pretty much for your mid game, you're just playing around 4 Umbral, so it's going to look like Yorick, Yone, Darius, and Elune. You're almost always playing Malphite, and you almost always play like some sort of Heavenly. It doesn't matter if it's Neeko, it could be Janna even, but it doesn't really matter if it's Neeko. Kiana doesn't matter. Even like something like a Zyra is going to be fine, even though it doesn't give you any traits, just because it gives you a little bit of backline damage. And then late game you're capping around 6 Umbral and Aurelia. Obviously like Hui is fine, but Hui is actually slightly worse than an Umbral comp, just because Hui's first ult will never heal any of your units, because by the time Hui is ulting for the first time, your shield has not really run out yet. So you're losing a little bit of value on the Hui cast, but it's pretty basic stuff. You're just looking for 2 main tank items are going to be Redemption Declaw, but you can fill out the third one based on like what your lobby needs. So sometimes if the lobby's heavy AD, then we're going to look for Bramble. Warmogs is fine. Spark is fine. Spark is pretty bad, but I would like, double Redemption's even fine. Redemption on someone else is fine. Bramble, I've seen BT, it's not that good, but like Warmogs, just like any random other tank item is going to be fine. Bramble is probably going to be the most evergreen one, but like even like a Stone Plate's more than fine instead of the Bramble as well. And then Elune's going to be using basic Elune items. The most important one is Morello. Shojin and Archangels are Abyss, but they're replaceable to some degree with like other items, whether it be like blue buff or even like an adaptive helm is really strong in place of the Shojin. And Archangels is going to be the best just because this is a comp that like kind of like stalls them out. Yorick is a really, really tanky unit. It's a stall comp. So Elune's really going to be able to build out all those Archangel stacks and then start one-shotting things slowly and executing with Umbral. So yeah, this comp is the strongest one. Play this one if you can. If you guys have like already played against like Vertical Umbral, either in the last patch or in the current patch, you'll know exactly how strong this comp is. It's not really kind of like a secret. I put some of the stronger augments that you can take with this. It's all the Umbral specific augments, so Umbral Crown, Wrath of the Moon, and Raid Boss specifically is really, really strong. I think when you're playing Raid Boss, you just try to add a couple more Behemoths, at least probably 4, but even 6 becomes reasonable, say you can't hit set. and you can't hit Silas or something, you can probably hit Silas, then you can just start playing like 6 Behemoth with Raid Boss, and it's still really, really powerful as long as you're playing like a Loon Yorick. At that point, you could probably even drop 4 Umbral and play around Behemoth a little bit more, but it doesn't really matter at that point, just because this Augment is just strong regardless of whether or not you're playing like a lot of Behemoths versus not that many Behemoths, just because your strongest Behemoth will always be Yorick in this case. So next up we have Story Champion. This one's a little bit new. So like this one is something that you're not going to be familiar with pretty much at all, just because it has not been viable until this current patch. That being said, it's been like playable maybe in the old patches, especially at lower elos, but right now it's like omega strong even at the highest level of play, and because people aren't that familiar with it, it's probably even stronger than some of the data or some of the match histories might suggest, just because once people become more familiar with this comp, obviously it becomes a lot better, right? So pretty standard stuff. You're just ideally your level 6 board is going to look something like this: 3 Story Weaver, 4 Warden, Alawi, and Mumu. But obviously you're rolling mostly on 5 for this comp, so in that case you just drop one of the Wardens until you can fit in at 6. And then your Garen items, standard BT Titans, melee carry is really good, but also just like full tank Garen's also good. So Redemption, Declaw I believe is actually his single best item. So you know, BT Titans Declaw is actually this. BT Titans Sterax also good. BT Sterax Declaw also good. Augments for this comp are not as specific as the other ones. In fact, Warden Crest doesn't actually become that good, other than it reduces your need for hitting set. So obviously it's a 5 cost. Most of the time when you hit this comp, you will be able to fast 8, fast 9. So it's actually not that much of a requirement to it's not like the requirement of hitting set is less daunting than it seems, just because you'll be able to get to level 8 and level 9 relatively healthily and with a decent amount of econ, just because this Garen 3 will streak you. So this augment, the way the 1 cost ones work, the way the 1 cost hero augments work, is that it gives you a 2-star right away. So if I already have a Garen 2 and then I get Story Champion, it gives me 6 Garens total. And when you have 6 Garens total, pretty much the chance that you don't have Garen 3 by stage 3 is astronomically low. Assuming you hyper roll on 3-1, that just means like you stay on level 4 and you just roll it down to whatever you need to hit your Garen 3 on level 4 before you naturally turn level 5. And yeah, you'll just have a Garen 3 and you'll probably be able to streak through most of the stage as long as you're playing a board that resembles something like this. The exact units in the backline don't really matter all that much. Sometimes you'll see Teemo and Sivir played, and then maybe at level 7 they'll fit in their Story Weaver, whether it be Zoe or Zyra, it doesn't really matter. Zoe tends to be pretty good just because it gives you Arcanist. Arcanist is not that powerful for this comp, but your backline carries tend to be AP focused. So these are holding items until Hui Lilia. Doesn't really matter. Like Teemo can hold items, Zyra can hold items, even Zoe can hold items, so it doesn't matter. The reason why I put 2 Garens here, by the way, is just to show that like there's a lot of different items you can actually use on this champ. It's not just BT Titans Abuse like it normally is with these kind of like melee bruiser type carries. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. Redemption can obviously go on anyone. So if say you want to put Redemption on Mumu, Mumu will live not as long as Garen, but it still functions perfectly fine as like your Redemption for the comp, and then you're just filling it out with 6 Warden. Eventually you'll hit 6 Warden and you just have a random backline AP carry of your choice. Most of the time it's going to be AP, but even like say you have a lot of AD items, then you can look for something like a sniper duo carry. So that's probably going to look something like Caitlyn Ashe, just because Caitlyn gives Ghostly. Ashe, standard items, Last Whisper is really good, just because Garen's doing predominantly physical damage with Story Champion. And then basic Rageblade is also really good because she has a lot of fight scaling. You can even go double Rageblade, but obviously your standard Ashe build, DB, Giant Slayer, IE are all reasonable, Hurricane's all reasonable, right? And because this comp doesn't actually use that many bows outside of Titans, it's pretty easy to get your Ashe items online. That being said, it does use some bows and some swords, so if you want to, once again, go the AP route, it tends to be stronger mid and late game anyway. It's just, you do have options when it comes to who your backline carry ends up being, right? Alright, finally, we have Lucky Paws or Kobuko reroll. Really basic stuff. It's the exact same thing, exact same rules as Garen, but you're using slightly different items. So obviously Kobuko wants full tank items. You always want Redemption Declaw on any of these like Giga full tank, kind of like solo carry type stuff. You'll see it across sets. So in this set, it's Yorick and Kobuko. In other sets, it'll be like someone else. Sometimes your main tank, say you're playing outside of like hero augments, you're still going to want to see Redemption Declaw just because it's the strongest health scaling itemization you can have. And Declaw just specifically is an extremely strong item right now, both in the meta as well as just like purely as an item. It's good even if you don't really need that much MR, just because the other stats that it gives is really, really reasonable on top of the MR that it does give. And most comps generally have some sort of trickle MR damage. That's not going to be true for all comps, but like say you're playing like Kai'Sa in the past, and Teemo's, you know, frequently doing like 5k damage. Say you're playing like Ashe in the old patch as well, then you're going to have like a Lilia do like 5k damage. So Declaw just tends to be really, really strong. in those scenarios, as well as like AP units such as like Syndra and Lilia tend to like really struggle with Declaw, and both for different reasons. The reason why Syndra struggles with Declaw is just because if you're stuck on a Declaw, then Syndra ends up killing no other units. Your units, all your other random units that you might not think are that valuable just have a lot of longevity because Syndra's not killing anything, and then they'll just like slowly but surely pepper down your team. The reason why Declaw is really strong against Lilia is because the Lilia struggles to do single target damage, so it might kill your whole team, but because it can never finish off this Kobuko, whoever your main tank is, then Lilia will fail to actually win the fight because Kobuko will eventually walk up to Lilia and one-shot it. Similar thing is true for Hui. Azir specifically does a lot of good like single kind of AoE damage, but like not like full spread AoE, so it's a little bit better in this scenario. But like Hui, Syndra, and Lilia all struggle really hard into Declaw, which is why Declaw is like really, really powerful on these types of units. And then lastly, your third item is going to be a little bit meta specific. So once again, Bramble is not that strong right now, so any of these 3 items will work perfectly acceptably. But you know, Bramble generally is like the more kind of like evergreen version. Like it'll work in almost any meta. I feel much more comfortable recommending this just because it'll work in any meta. Some metas AD will be strong and Bramble's just going to be like by far the best, but like Spark. And then same idea as this Garen comp, you're really just filling out your backline carry with something random. So Teemo, Sivir, Zara gives you the Kale, which is generally a pretty strong mid-game kind of like addition to your board. You're just playing 4 Bruiser all the time, at least until late game, where you can try to fit in 6 and 8 Bruiser. So you do really want to fit in 6 and 8 Bruiser, but because mid-game you don't have access to like stuff like Silas and Galio, which are 4 costs, then you're really just looking at like something like this for now. And then as you get into late game, once again, you're just, you know, playing these legendary upgraded 5 costs that as your backline carries, you know, any of these AP items can go on these guys. I just put Rageblade here just because Kobuko lives until the end of the game. So, or sorry, end of the fight. So any of these like scaling items are going to be really, really strong. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to build Rageblade. Like it's completely unnecessary. But yeah, it's just, you know, stuff that like you can look out for. And then as for augments, it's going to be pretty similar to the other comps in the video. You want your bruiser +1, which is your vertical +1. In that case, you can ideally fit in 8 bruiser, and you don't even need any 5 costs. So just throw in a Rek'Sai somewhere, or which bruiser am I missing? Oh, TK. And then you can fit in 8 bruiser somewhere. Very standard stuff, which is really easy. Other stuff is just like health scaling augments such as well-fed, unified resistance, martyr are all really strong just because they give your Kobuko so much more effective HP. And yeah, that's the video. I hope you guys try out some of these augments on your own. They're a little bit of a unique playstyle, and they're really, really straightforward. Just so if you guys kind of like look out for the spot to play these, you guys probably won't regret it. I'm sure someone in the comments is gonna be like, haha, I played this comp, I got pranked, I did what, I went 8th or whatever. And yeah, in those cases, like that's a little bit unlucky. You're probably misplaying a little bit, but in general, these augments are really, really strong, and you guys pretty much have to play them. That's it for the video. If you guys like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down in the description, or sorry, down in the comment section on stuff that you want to see or feedback about this video. And otherwise, you guys can check out all my socials down in the description below. I made a TikTok recently, and I've been posting the YouTube shorts there as well. Hopefully, I'm going to start making like some TikTok specific content. So if you guys are interested in that, check that out. I've been streaming a lot more on Twitch. So if you guys want to actually see me play some of these comps and some of these games, then you can check me out there when I'm live. And yeah, until next time, this has been the video. Peace.